Hi, my name's Adele. Recently, my life has turned upside down, and that's because I've learned a terrible secret about my family, which my parents had been hiding from me for more than 10 years. I still can't accept what happened, because it looks more like a movie script rather than real life. You want to know what I've learned? Then watch this video to the end. Well, this story started with a routine homework assignment I got at school. The school management declared the last month before the summer holidays was a family month, so they planned many events. We had a family school sports day, creativity competition, picnic festival, and photo collage contest, me and my family. My parents and I were far from sports, and none of us could even dance or sing. However, my mom cooked delicious cakes for the picnic festival. They were sold out like hotcakes. But as for me, I loved working with photos, so I decided to take part in the family photo collage contest. I had a good camera. I often took pictures of everything I saw around me: nature, animals, my friends, family, people. So I had a lot of pictures from my family holidays. I spent several evenings making a brilliant photo collage on a large piece of paper. I moved photos back and forth, adding some artistic elements to them, but I still felt like I was missing something. When I showed my photo collage to the teacher and complained I didn't know how to finish it better, she advised me to add some old, maybe black and white pictures. I mean, those where I was still a baby. And maybe even a picture of my mom pregnant with me. I thought it was a great idea. As soon as my mom returned from work, I asked her to show me the old albums. I was sure every family had such memorabilia, and I thought our family was no exception. However, I was disappointed. My mom said when I was 5, there was a serious fire in our old house. None of us were injured, but many things couldn't be saved, including our old photo albums, some of my toys, and my kindergarten drawings. Of course, I was very upset. But the more I thought about what my mom had said, the more questions I had. First of all, in my 16 years of life, this was the first time I'd ever heard about a fire in our previous house. Nobody spoke of it during family gatherings. My parents never even mentioned they once had to go through such a hardship. In addition, I definitely saw some black and white photos in my parents' bedroom where they were very young, just married. In one of the pictures, they were at the seaside kissing. Some of their friends took it. But how did they manage to save this picture and lost several photo albums with me? Not that I had any reason to distrust my parents, but it seemed to me my mom and dad were hiding something from me. Maybe the pet I used to have died in that fire, and that was a psychological trauma for me. I invented different things, but I didn't dare ask my parents straight. So I went to the city library where there were different issues of local newspapers for past years. I was sure if the fire was quite large, then some local newspaper would definitely write about it, especially if some people had suffered from it. I told my parents I was preparing for exams, and I had to spend almost 2 weeks studying a selection of local newspapers that were published 10 to 11 years ago. I said it was a very difficult task, and that's why I would have to spend most of my days in the library. But every time I came across some news about fires, I carefully read every line, thinking I would find some story out about our fire. But there was nothing like that. Instead, I came across the news about a terrible car accident that involved several cars and where 5 people died. There were young parents and their little daughter, aged 5, in one of the cars. The parents died immediately as they were sitting in the front seat, but the daughter, who was in the back seat, survived. I probably wouldn't have paid attention to this, but I saw the photos of the victims, and 2 of them seemed very familiar to me. I really felt a pain in my chest when I looked at their faces. I don't know why, but I photographed the news about the accident and decided to stop looking for information about the fire. Anyway, maybe this fire wasn't that big for local journalists to write about it. The school family month passed. My photo collage took first place, even without black and white photos. But still, the story about the fire didn't get out of my mind. I asked my mom again about this, but suddenly her mood totally changed. It was quite clear she didn't want to talk about it anymore. She gave me very evasive answers to all my questions. When I was deleting the old photos from my phone, I suddenly came across a picture with the news about the accident. The faces of the dead man and woman again seemed very familiar to me, so I decided to Google these people just out of curiosity. Quite surprisingly, I found a lot of information on them. It turned out Mr. and Mrs. Stewart were very well-off people. Mr. Stewart was the owner of some huge investment fund. Mrs. Stewart was a fashion designer. They had a small 5-year-old daughter who survived the accident. However, no one heard anything about the Stewart's daughter after the accident, and it was quite strange because she would inherit a huge fortune and empire from her parents, including a mansion on the outskirts of the city. As a journalist said, if the girl wasn't found before she turned 18, then the entire estate would be transferred to other successors. The article even had the address of the Stewart's mansion, so just out of curiosity again, I decided to go have a look at it. Perhaps because this whole story seemed extremely mysterious to me, as this little girl who had been born with a silver spoon in her mouth somehow disappeared. As I expected, the mansion was surrounded by a high fence, so I could only see the balconies on the first and second floors and its bright red roof. I wandered around for a while, and I was about to go home when I heard a woman calling me. I turned around and saw an elderly woman standing at the gate of the mansion. She was looking at me, almost crying, and she suddenly hugged me and said, "Diana, you've finally come home." I apologized to the woman and said my name was Adele, and I happened to just pass by this mansion, so it could never be my home as I lived in the city center with my parents. I guess the woman didn't believe me. She looked at me carefully and said with resentment in her voice, "Do you think I wouldn't recognize the eyes of a kid I'd raised for 5 years?" I didn't know what she was talking about. Mrs. Evans, as she introduced herself, asked me to accompany her to the mansion's kitchen. At the same time, she promised she would tell me everything that happened in the Stewart's family while I was out. She also said she would treat me to a cup of delicious tea. During her story, I realized she'd mistaken me for the Stewart couple's missing daughter, Diana. In fact, we were the same age and looked quite similar, so it's not surprising the old woman confused us. Mrs. Evans said that after the Stewart's death, she had to look after their baby, but once she was walking with her and she left her to go and buy some water. When she came back, the baby was no longer on the playground. For all these years, this woman reproached herself for not saving the most precious thing left to her from her beloved employers. She worked as a maid and babysitter for the Stewarts. I repeated I wasn't Diana. My name was Adele. I'm not the Stewart's daughter. Mrs. Evans seemed a little mad at me. She said she would show me the baby pictures of the girl in her room. Maybe I would remember something. She even suggested the kidnappers might have forced me to forget my past, for example, by hypnosis. I was really sorry for the old lady, so I agreed to go with her to the room where the missing girl, Diana, used to live. But honestly, I wish I hadn't, because I got a strong déjà vu. All these surroundings, the furniture, even the big dollhouse, and the bed with the pink curtains seemed very, very familiar to me. And when I saw Diana's pictures on the table, I was even more surprised because we looked like two peas in a pod. I even understand why Mrs. Evans thought I was Diana. Later, I left this house with a restless feeling. First, because the old lady didn't want to let me go at all, and that was confusing for me. Second, I was thrilled with the feeling that little Diana's room seemed like home to me. Different thoughts came to my mind, and every time they got more and more incredible. When I got home, I felt very tired. I heard my parents discussing something in the kitchen, so I went to them. I don't know why, but I didn't immediately enter the room, and I accidentally witnessed a conversation that ruined my whole life. My mom told my dad there were only 2 years left, then they would get rid of the girl, take over her inheritance, and leave for another country. I didn't know whom she was talking about until my mom said recently the girl had become too curious, asking too many questions about the fire. She saw my browser search history and found a query about the Stewart family. My dad suggested she hit her on the head again so that she would forget about everything again. Now, there was no doubt about it. They were talking about me. But why in the world would my mom and dad want to get rid of me? Aren't they my real parents? Am I really Diana, the Stewart couple's daughter who disappeared more than 10 years ago after the car accident? I turned on the recorder on my iPhone with trembling hands. I snuck into the kitchen and told my parents I knew everything. They had kidnapped me, and now they wanted to get rid of me to get all my inheritance. I was going all in because I wasn't sure of anything. But my mom and dad confirmed everything, and they told me how they came up with this plan, how they used fake documents to get custody of me. They told me how they asked everyone to keep it a secret, that they had the Stewart's daughter, promising a good share. I don't know why they told me all their plans. They probably thought they would then scare me and lock me up somewhere for 2 years. But I managed to text my friend asking her to call the police to my home. When the police officers arrived, they took us all to the station to clarify the details. I gave the investigator all the recordings from my phone. I was too shocked, because at that moment, the people I really loved my whole life, the ones I called Mom and Dad, suddenly became strangers to me. These were just some greedy people who wanted to get rid of me for the sake of my inheritance. I didn't know what to do next. So when I was released from the police station, I went to the Stewart mansion to see Mrs. Evans. I told her everything, and she just repeated her words. "I'm glad you're finally home, Diana." But this time, I didn't argue with her. Tell me, what would you do in my shoes? Would you turn your fake parents into the police? Or would you keep quiet? After all, they didn't kill anyone, and they even raised me and cared for me for almost 10 years. Sometimes my conscience is killing me, so I need your advice. If you enjoyed my story, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. Click the bell button to turn on notifications and never miss new stories. Bye-bye, everyone!